Hello, everybody. This is David Chavez, and this is Strategy Sherpa Show. And we have a great guest today. We have Karim Abouelnaga. And we just went through this, and then I'm going to mess it up right at the start of the show, Karim. I am sorry. I know our names are so important to us too. So help me out.
Abouelnaga.
Abouelnaga. And I said it like 4 times right before we got on the show, and I still messed it up. Unbelievable. All right. Well, welcome to the show. Want to talk about a few things that we're doing. assuredstrategy.com/events. We have a scaling up workshop in Portland, Oregon. Me and Ted Servata, the two guys who work with Karim, actually, we're going to be doing this workshop together. It is on May 8th from 8 to 5 p.m. This is a workshop. We're coming to do work. So be ready. It's not just us talking at you. And then on the 23rd of May, we have a Mastering Efficiency, Process-Driven Tactics for Cost Savings. I'm talking just a little too fast here. And that's going to be done by Preston Law. Preston is a Six Sigma black belt, and he is very efficient with processes. And so, and on the operations side of a company, he's sort of a master. And then in the beginning of June, we have Mastering Time Management, Prioritize to Thrive. And that's going to be done by LJ Vargas out of our firm on June 13th. All these times are Central Time from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time. And you can convert that to your time zone if you will. All right, Karim, welcome.
Thank you, David. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. We've been waiting quite a while to get you here. So it's a real honor to have you here. I want you to start off because, when you and I had a conversation, I'm traveling from one city to the next. I think we started talking when I was in one city. I landed, we picked up the conversation, and then we started working together. But when you started telling me what you do, it just really hit my heart. Like it just was like, hit me right at the core of like what I really believe in. And because I grew up really not well off, right? And what you're doing is you're helping kids. How I look at it is you're helping kids like me when I was young, and you're helping change their lives. And tell the audience what you're actually doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we grew up very similar. And what I would say is I'm helping kids who also grew up like I did. And so I'm working with public schools, really trying to support low-income kids, first-generation students, minorities, and getting to and through not just their primary and secondary education, but eventually to college, right, where our life prospects are significantly altered. So I was raised in an immigrant household, went through really struggling, under-resourced public schools, and just had lucky breaks across the way. And I just don't feel like we need to get lucky in order to have a successful outcome. And that's sort of where we come in, partnering with schools to really help drive academic outcomes for their scholars.
Yeah. I bet you anything, we have never talked about this, and it'd be really interesting to ask you this question. Were your parents like mine, constantly talking about education and how important it was, and making sure, like my dad used to say to me all the time, is, look, Dave, they can take everything away from you, but they can't take your education away from you.
Yeah, I always have to tell people we were not the model immigrant family, and my family did not talk about education like that.
Oh, good.
My father dropped out of high school in Egypt, and he was very entrepreneurial and kind of just like figured it out along the way. My mom only finished high school in Egypt. And when we were growing up in the United States, like we had a little small business for a little bit before he was diagnosed with cancer and passed away. But the business, the hustle, the entrepreneurial like stint was always more important. Like we would be at the store instead of going to school. And when I was in 7th grade, I had 60 absences because my mom sort of felt like if you don't want to go to school, that was like your decision. You can choose whether or not you wanted to do it. And that, at the time is not good parenting. Don't let a 10 or 11-year-old decide whether or not they want to go to school because almost always the answer was no. And her thing was, it's on you. Like, if you do well, like, that's good. If you don't do well, like, you're messing up your future. And she was kind of hands off. So if I could go back in time, I wish she had pushed us a little bit more because I think it would have helped my siblings.
Uh-huh.
But we were not that model like education family. It didn't really dawn on me until I got to high school and our situation got worse, that education was actually a way out of poverty.
Right.
Education was a real way to not have to experience what I experienced as a child and not have to experience that for my family.
Yeah, and I love how you just said that because for the younger generation, they have to really understand that education is so critical to what ends up happening in their life. And I loved college. But I think college was sort of useless, but it wasn't. One of the things, and I think we've talked about this maybe one or two times, and you may have a little bit different philosophy, but college really taught me how to think, right? And really taught me how to solve problems in my life, in my work, in everything. And so I'm very grateful for the learning that I did at college, not just because of the content of the learning, but also the actual learning of being able to think and solve
Mm-hmm.
problems.
Absolutely agree with you. I mean, I heard this once when I was interviewing for my internships, and they said like 99% of what you learn, you're going to learn on the job.
That's right.
Right. So you're learning 1% of that in college. So what's the point then of going to college? Well, it's the things you're talking about. It's the social skills you're building. For a lot of people, it's the first time they're living on their own and doing it in a safe space instead of one that is a little bit higher risk. Thinking critically, being able to write, communicate clearly. And David, I have to say this, there's no surefire way to like getting or achieving socioeconomic mobility. So college is not an end all be all, right? It's not the silver bullet that it used to be, but it's still our society's best lever at achieving socioeconomic mobility. So it's not guaranteed, but if you're asking me what's the highest probability of achieving that in your life, it's going to college still. So it plays a really significant role for a lot of us.
Yeah, yeah, I was pretty instrumental in helping Nevada State College get started when I lived in Las Vegas, my passion for this on this side, especially for the market that you're serving, because I grew up where I had to tape my shoes together. I think we had talked about that at one time, even during our initial call, and that's why you really hit me. And I really wanted to work with your company and help you because your mission is so critical, and I think you've even seen that in retreats with me of me reminding your team how critical it really is. And they love. I think sometimes they wonder, like, is this guy's more passionate than we are? Sometimes it's because it's so critical to like a lot of these kids. What your company does is actually going to change their life in the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it'll determine what school they end up going to, what college they get accepted to, and all these
What
things
jobs
matter.
they get.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that. I mean, and we've been doing it now. This is year 14, right? So we've been able to see that firsthand. I now have kids who have gone to work at BlackRock, right? The same company I turned down my full-time offers from to work on this. I've had kids now get into Cornell and graduate from Cornell, the same
Right.
college that I had that opportunity from. So it's already happening. Now it's just how do we do this at a larger scale and for more children across the country?
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that because you want to get into every major city and impact all these areas that are really hit the end, and they're very immigrant driven, right? We're trying to help them become Americans and really get the benefit of being in this country and taking advantage of all that there is to offer here. Because I love how you've taken advantage of it, and you really and you're sort of like, in my world, you're like an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, right?
Well,
That's just how
you
that's
have
how
to
I look at
model
you.
it, right? So I think I've been in education long enough now to know that people will do what you do before they do what you say. And so a lot of my ethos, even approaching this work, has been I need to make sure that I'm walking the walk, not just talking the talk, because I need to be the role model for the scholars. I need to represent what it is that's possible for them. And so I think about this twofold for me, right? As I'm achieving, as I'm learning, as I'm getting better, I'm hopefully creating a new pathway for people, but also not just getting up on a platform and saying, hey, you guys should do this and it's important for you, which is the extent of what I got from the role models that I was growing up with in my neighborhood, right? Oh, education's important, but they dropped out. Oh, education's important, but they didn't go to school. And so I know it's important to make sure that we're walking the walk just as much as it is that we're talking the talk.
Right. And I think like you said, my family wasn't overly educated either. As a matter of fact, I was the first one to graduate college, But at the and when you're a kid and you're going through that and your parents aren't really educated, there's no real anybody that can really help you with school, right? If you're talented and you just have a natural ability, which I believe you probably had, because I believe I had it a little bit. Some of it was just natural talent, right? And then, but they don't have help to push them up to that next level, if you will.
Yeah, and David, just to your point on talent, I do think we all have talent. I think there's different levels of it. But
Mhm.
I do think when you get the resources, you're able to unlock another level. So I had folks who would come to me and they say, Kareem, you know, you would have been fine without all of these nonprofits, without all of these mentors, and without all of those role models. And I say the same thing every single time. Yeah, I probably would have graduated from my community college and gone and gotten a job. But without that support, without those extra resources, I wouldn't have finished in the top 10% of my class, graduating from an Ivy League university and running a citywide organization at the time that I finished. And so I always like caution folks to say, yes, if a kid's going to be okay, think about how much more we're leaving on the table by not adding that additional support or fuel there.
Yeah, I love how you're saying that. Hey, listen, everybody. His company's name is Practice Benefits Corp, and you're headquartered out in New York City. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
And
right.
but he's currently expanding into some different cities. He's sort of keeping that a little quiet until it gets a little bit more out there. They get a little more settled into those cities. But Kareem, what we do on this show is we talk about mistakes we've made as entrepreneurs, and you know, and again, not to rub our nose in it because that's not the purpose, right? The purpose is really to help other entrepreneurs understand that mistakes are part of the game. And then we love to talk about what you did to overcome the mistake because we really want to get to the other side. And oftentimes, and you and I have talked about this a couple of different times, that's the real catalyst to getting you to some other level a lot of times, right? So I'm really interested in hearing what your mistake you're going to share with everyone was.
Well, I'll tell you this much. At the end of 2017, early 2018, I nearly bankrupted the company.
Ah, nice
And
mistake. All right,
just
good. We're getting
just
into the
starting
meat.
there, nearly bankrupting a business. You don't make one bad decision. There's a series of them, but I think the biggest catalyst was not knowing how to manage my board and ultimately dismantling the one that I had. And so I definitely 100% say that was the first domino in the trigger of other mistakes that happened after.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll start a larger conversation, and we need to take a break because this is a live radio show. This is David Chavez, and we are the Strategy Sherpa Show, sitting here with Kareem. And help me again, Kareem.
Abouelnaga.
Abouelnaga. I'll get it down someday, Kareem. I promise you. But I love your name though. So here we go. Hey everybody. This book right here, we're written by Michelle May. She's going to be with us in a few weeks. Take a look, and you may want to read it before you have her. We have her on because it's going to be one of those shows where she's going to go over some great tips for us. Kareem, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez. Thank you. All right, so Kareem, welcome back. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show, and we are talking to Kareem Abouelnaga.
Abouelnaga.
Abouelnaga. Ah,
You got it. I mean, you're saying it. I don't know.
This is just getting embarrassing at this point. All right, Kareem. So you were talking about your issue, and you started talking about your board. And so let's go back through the issue just to make sure everybody's got it because we're on the other side of the commercial. And then let's talk about it a little bit.
Sure. So I think I have to start with our origins because we didn't start as a public benefit corporation. We started actually as a 501c3 nonprofit. And when I started fundraising to do the work that we were doing, as you start to get to a certain scale, donors and funders kind of expect that you have a board because they want the fiduciary responsibility, they want a little bit of independence, and they want governance, which is great, right? You want a board, unless you don't know what to do with a board and you don't know what a board should be doing. And so I kind of built the initial board just off of recommendations from donors, mentors that I had, and kind of put them together. And then one of the things you start to realize on the nonprofit side, and this is one of the challenges a lot of organizations have, is you get to a point where you need more money, right? And so you need more money. And one of the things that you can sell almost as a nonprofit is a board seat. And so we then had foundations coming to us and saying, hey, we'll make a grant of $30,000 a year if you put X person on your board. And a corporation will come in and say, hey, we'll do pro bono legal work if you put this partner on your board. And so it's kind of a training ground for them to start to get some board experience, but it's a coveted thing. And before you know it, as your budget grows, you need more of those seats because that guarantees your revenue.
Yeah.
So I had a board of almost 14 people. And getting 14 people to coordinate for a board is just logistically challenging. And I started to lose a little bit of faith in how boards kind of operated and the value that they could add. Because when you're trying to get that many people to come together for a meeting, you have last minute cancellations. It's not as big of a priority because not everyone's voice is equally heard or contributed to. It's hard enough having a conversation with 5 or 6 people in a meeting, let alone 14. And then everyone on the board is kind of volunteering. So they're not there to take risks. They're not there to push the organization forward. They're there to make sure that things don't go wrong and that they don't make any mistakes. And so I kind of felt like the organization was moving in a direction where now we were going to go from nonprofit to for-profit as a B-Corp. And at this juncture, no one who's on the nonprofit board can move over to the for-profit side. And so I kind of had these feelings already that the board wasn't really working the way I wanted it to. And instead of going and building a new board for the for-profit side, I said, this is like my get out of jail free card, like this is the opportunity I've been waiting for my entire time. And I went without a board. And so I say that had to have been the biggest mistake that I could have made, because in the year and a half after that, every single mistake that I made would have been checked by a board, right? So we overprojected, which happens for a lot of companies in the beginning, and that may have happened with a board. But then we spent the money before we made it. That would not have happened before we had a board. And then we promoted people into senior and executive level roles who didn't have senior or executive level experience. That would not have happened. We maxed out our line of credit. And then once we did that, we started invoice factoring, right? So
no, the spiral to death.
Yeah. So, which would not have happened had a board been present, because you would have needed approval on the amount of money that we were borrowing, just good governance standpoint. And then in the process, we violated our debt covenants. And I didn't know what a debt covenant was at 24, 25. And so maxed out our original line of credit. So as you can see,
as a CPA, you're making me cringe.
This series of bad decisions, too much risk that we took on. And it's because I didn't know how to build, I didn't know how to manage, and then I didn't know how to lead a board ultimately. And so got to that point where I realized, okay, yes, there's a dozen different bad decisions and mistakes that happen, but it all started with not having good governance, not having a check, and I'm not someone who needs a lot of accountability because I'm very disciplined, but I definitely need someone who's going to check my ideas, make sure I'm not going off the rails from time to time, or think something is a lot better than it actually is. And I think boards just add a tremendous amount of value. I'm happy to talk to those, but just want to say, like, that board piece is so critical. And sometimes people are waiting until they build the organization. And my advice and perspective is, as soon as you have an idea and you're ready to move forward, get a board. Like, it adds value from day one.
Yeah. I have a board. I definitely believe in that. I think that it's really important that you do that. It helps you think about your business totally different, because a lot of them aren't involved in the day-to-day activities. So they ask you really silly questions, but great questions for you because you're not asking yourself those questions, right? And because oftentimes you can believe your own stuff a little too much, and the board really challenges that thinking a little bit.
And knowing they exist, right? So, just the fact that they exist changes the way you operate. It's like, it's silly to say that, but now I'm thinking, okay, if this got back to one of my board members, how would they react? How would they respond? Would I be proud of this? So I think there's that. When you're trying to attract talent, a board is so critical, right? Who else is involved with the organization? And you can't afford in the very beginning to bring in the right talent right away. And so if they're coming to work with you, they're putting some faith, not just in you, but who's on that board. I think also from an accountability standpoint, you might not be having the accountability conversations that you need to have with certain people on the team. And that's going to surface at the board level. When numbers aren't being hit, maybe responsibilities are falling through the crack, you're going to get questions about those things, and you're going to have to answer to the board. And then the opportunity for the rest of your company's development, I just think there have been so many chances, for our executives to have an opportunity to present, interact with the board members. That helps them in their own professional development and growth. And so I just think you leave so much on the table when you leave that part out. So happy to talk about how I got through the bankruptcy, but I can tell you right away, I started to think about how I was going to rebuild my board to start turning the ship around.
Yeah, no, I definitely want you to go through that. I want you to, first of all, because you had talked about a few things that may be confusing to some of the listeners because not everybody understands them. So a B Corp.
Yeah, so it's just a for-profit organization. The difference is it has a fiduciary obligation to maximize public benefit first. So traditional C Corp or LLC is maximize profit, and then whatever you do after is on you. B Corps maximize public benefit, then maximize profit, and then whatever else you want to do. And then you're evaluated every 2 years, and your score is publicly available on the B Corp website.
Okay, interesting. And I love that you explained that because I'm a CPA by trade. You made me cringe when you said you are factoring your invoices. That's usually the beginning of the gates of hell in a business. It really is. I mean, and you don't realize it at the time because you think you need more money to grow, and you're utilizing the money that you should have been paying. So you're getting caught up in this circle that's really hard to get out of. And we'll hit you on that on the other side. So why nonprofit? Why did you go to a B Corp for nonprofit? Because you talked a little bit about the board. Was it that the motivation was different, or what was different for you?
So I think at the start, I have to say, like, my purpose has never changed. And I think the more I dug in, the more I realized legal structures are just a means to an end. And what you need to do is pick the legal structure that's going to help you achieve or fulfill your purpose or mission. And when we started out, I wanted to serve low-income kids and families. And the only way I thought I could serve low-income kids and families was getting money from really rich people, corporations, and foundations. And so the nonprofit structure made sense. As I dug in deeper, I started to realize schools had money if you could solve a problem that the school administrator was facing and tie it into what it is you were trying to achieve. At which point I knew, okay, I needed a for-profit structure because I was limited in my ability to grow as a nonprofit. It was dependent on whether or not a donor felt good, if they saw something in the news that day, if they remembered to renew their donation. And I didn't want us to survive and scale that way. And so the for-profit model made sense. And then when you look at for-profits, there's LLCs, there's S Corps. I had already become familiar with the B Corp and the B Corp movement. It felt like it aligned for me what it stood for and what it was about. And I thought not just within like the time I was there, because I honestly will say this, I don't think your legal structure matters. It's more important like who owns the company while
That's
you're
correct.
alive. After you're gone, the legal structure really does matter. And so I was thinking beyond just, however, hopefully I live 100, 150 years, beyond that 100, 150 years, what's going to govern and make sure that the purpose, the values, the responsibility that I want to make sure we're having for our people exists. And the B Corp model felt like the right way to do that. So we're not just a certified B Corp, it's actually our governing documents are of a public benefit corporation. So we have to do good. And it's been frustrating sometimes. I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's not.
I've sat in rooms with you. I know it frustrates you sometimes because you
want to do something and you're like, oh, I want to make this investment. I want to make that decision. And you can't, because you have to justify how that's going to make public benefit. And as frustrating as it is, I always look back and I'm like, that's actually a good thing. And this is why I set it up this way. And if it wasn't me, I'd want to make sure that whoever was in this seat had those same constraints.
Yeah. No, I love how you said it because like a lot of companies, you'll talk to the leader of the company and you'll ask them what their motivation is, and they'll tell you that it's more to make a lot of money. So what they're basically saying, it's the profit of my organization. But when you really talk to entrepreneurs, profit is not the driver for most of them. There are some out there that are driven for the profit. And I will tell you, their company can shoot up and it may do really good. The odds are probably a lot smaller, right? But it's really interesting because when you focus on your customer and really what their needs are, right? And I know that a B Corp is really focused on that. That's the number one priority, is what does my customer need and how am I going to help them get what they need from me, right?
It also gives you a great framework for governance, how you should be treating your people, yes, how you treat your customers, how you measure and evaluate your impact. So I love it from that standpoint. When I was starting practice, business plan competitions kind of gave me the guardrails, right? To think about, hey, this is what you should be thinking about, your business model, your marketing plan, all these pieces. The B Corp assessment does that on the other side for what is it you should be thinking about to run business in a way that is good for society, good for your people, and good for the people that you're serving.
Yeah, I love it. You know, we are a live radio show, so there these segments come up quick. I mean, it doesn't even seem like we've been talking 13 minutes, and we have again. So we're gonna have to take a break real quick, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna finish up the conversation with Karim. Hey, Karim, thank you for coming today because I'm really enjoying this conversation, and you're covering a lot of really important things to me and the way that I even approach my business. And I'm not a B Corp, but I still approach it that way. And that's where I think success comes from. So I love what you're saying. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez. We'll be right back after these messages. So, all right, everybody, we're back. This is David Chavez. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show. And I'm here with Karim Abouelnaga. Abouelnaga. I said it right that time. I got it right that time. I got it right. I finally touchdown. Hold on. Now I feel better. Oh boy. One thing in my life that I've realized is that I really suck with names. And I try to just tell people that up front because I don't want to offend them. And I know how important names are, right? Names are really important. And
Dave, you're reinforcing a limiting belief. I can't let you keep telling yourself that.
I love this. So Karim is actually one of my clients, and he's given me feedback. You know, one of the great things about my job is that I get to work with really great leaders like yourself, and I learn so much. It's amazing how much my clients are even teaching me. So I love this. And you talked about some really important things last time, and I want to come back to those things again because they're so important in business, and so many business owners get mixed up. And as a CPA, you would think that profit is the thing that I should be chasing. I do want profit. And I know you do too. It's not that we don't want it. It's that our mission and our purpose, as we call it, our purpose is the most important thing. And share your purpose with everyone.
Yeah, to ensure no child circumstance limits their potential.
Yeah. And I sit in rooms with you guys, and you have these really hard conversations about the business, what you're trying to do. And that's alive when we're talking about it and everything that we're doing. And it's really critical. So you talked a little bit about almost going bankrupt. And I want you to come back to that because, look, I was a CPA running a CPA firm, and I almost went bankrupt twice. It'd have been great on my resume. Yeah, David Chavez, CPA, hire me. I've been only bankrupt twice. It would have been great to have, I had the financial acumen. Exactly. I had the financial acumen to get out of it, but gosh, it was not fun. And I learned some very valuable lessons about business during this time, right? So share a little bit about what happened and how you ended up there.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, outgrowing your cash flow is a real thing. Projections are hard, right? Regardless of where you're at. And we had 3 years of 300% growth, right? We went from 140,000 to 390,000. And then we went from 390,000 to 1.1 million. And so, of course, the next leap is from 1.1 million to 3.3 million, right? And so,
of course,
logically, that's the next jump. And so, we've done it twice already. This is the third time in a row, except there's a lot of challenges that come with that, right? That 1 million to on is a whole nother beast altogether. You need different leadership. You need different sets of system. Your banking relationships, all of those things matter. And so we got to a point where our receivables were just backlogged, and we're working with the government. We didn't really know how to collect on time. We didn't have all of our processes together. And here we go, ballooning our AR. And then no cash, right? So we've overpaying on salaries, overpaying on talent. We were running a really seasonal business because we were summer only at the time. And now we have no cash. And so we wound up growing 100% that year, doing 2.1 million. So in any normal year, it would have been a phenomenal year, except we projected that we were going to be at 3 million, and the difference between 2 million and 3 million is $1 million. And so
it's like 1/3 more or
it's
half
not, it's
more.
not like, it's not like missing from 140 to 300, right? And the gap is 100K. No, it's $1 million. And so
Yeah.
I grew up poor, right? There's no father to call. There's no uncle there's no rich uncle. There's no bank I could pick up the phone call and say, hey, let me guarantee this with whatever. I had no collateral. I'm not in my 40s with a house or something that I can mortgage or finance. And so the only thing we had access to was invoice factoring. And so that invoice factoring is someone's giving you 50, 60% of an outstanding receivable, and they're charging you interest weekly. And man, you talk about a shark industry, like that is, you're in predatory waters there. Like if you're going to touch that.
Yeah. And then if you don't pay it back, if the company who owes you the money doesn't pay you, they take it back from you.
Oh, absolutely.
So you've been borrowing that money, paying interest, and they take the money back from you if your client doesn't pay it.
Oh, and liens everywhere, like all these things you have no control over. So obviously, when we finally found out that we had violated our loan covenants, we had lined up another lender that was willing to come in and help us, and they were going to subordinate their debt. But our primary lender, who I don't really like anymore, Chase, I'm going to try and avoid their name. They are really convenient, so we still bank with them, unfortunately. But our relationship manager just kind of like let us out to dry. This senior lender was going to come in, they were going to clear the debt, and they were like, you violated your debt covenant, we don't want to do business with you. And so they turned out our loan. In that moment, I went from 22 full-time staff to 2. And so I reorged, and it was, people ask me like, how did I feel in that moment when it finally hit? And I always tell people I was relieved. And this is just how much of a coward I was at the time. I couldn't have the difficult accountability conversations with people. I didn't know how to tell people like, hey, we've made a lot of bad decisions and here are the consequences, or you're not pulling your weight, or the business has evolved and changed and we need something else, or we need to go in a different direction. I didn't know how to have those conversations with people. And so my like silly like workaround at the time was, let me show people the financials every single month. And you would think, as they saw the numbers get closer and closer to zero, that they would get the message, right? It doesn't work that way, right? People think that you're going to magically like find a way to make payroll no matter what. And it wasn't until we got to zero and I was like, guys, we're at zero. So like, what's everyone going to do? I can laugh in hindsight, but it's embarrassing when I think back to the leader that I was. I'm grateful I had that experience. To your point, I learned so much from it. But I owned the mistakes that I made. And so that's where it started, right? I owned the mistakes that I made. I started to reflect, right? Where were all of the junctures where the mistakes happened? And then how can I start to solve for these in a more methodical way, right? With the biggest stone, right? Starting with hey, I need to build a board to make sure that I have good governance and I have people who are going to check my ideas and help me move forward. And I need to find people that understand business, understand what I'm trying to build, and are going to hold me accountable because I respect, admire them, and know that they're going to push me in the right direction because they care about what I'm doing. And then from there, started to tackle each layer. Next step was, I need to get out of debt, right? How do I start to collect my receivables? It's not like the money wasn't there. It was there. It was just an AR. There was nothing in the bank. And so you're growing a company, sometimes you're profitable, but you have no cash. And that's exactly where we were at that point. So started to figure out how to get the cash back, got the company back on profitability, hired really, really slowly. Then the first few hires were incredibly critical. We were figuring things out. Everyone was doing everything. There wasn't a job that I didn't understand or learn. And that was one of the other things I realized. I had outgrown, the company had outgrown my ability to learn what was happening.
Yes.
And I was no longer understanding what this person was doing or what that person was doing or what they should be doing. And you can't manage what you don't know. So, and this is a fine line, right? You want to hire people who are better than you in those areas, but you still need to understand what they need to be doing.
That's
because if you don't know what they need to be doing at a high level, you're not going to be managing them effectively. And I had a board member at the time say, Karim, part of the mistake you made was you can be an inexperienced CEO, but then you need to have really experienced executives. Or you can be an experienced CEO, and then you can have inexperienced executives, because then you can build them up and you know what they should be doing. So that has always resonated for me. And I know as I've been building the company, we've bootstrapped, right? So the other side of it is you go venture back, you can go out and raise a bunch of money, you can hire the really experienced executives right away, but you're praying that you get product market fit, right? And that there's a business there. Or you bootstrap, you hire whatever you can afford. And then over time, as you make more money, you hopefully upgrade, right? And when you upgrade, people will come in, they might have to break systems and rebuild them, but it's just the nature of going in that direction. And at that point, you know you have product market fit. It's just a matter of continuing to grow at the right pace.
Yeah, no, I love how you said it because, you know, you and I have talked about this before and you've heard me talk about it. It's just, you know, we grow beyond our ability to amass the resources we really need to grow. Right. And I love how you said that you didn't have your mom and dad to call to write you a check to get you out of the situation. You had to work out of it. And that's sort of what happened to me in a few of my businesses over the years, is that I had to work my way out of it. There was no one I could call and get a check from to solve my silliness, I guess I'll call it now. And I love how you also said that it's very embarrassing, right? It took me years to tell people that I almost went bankrupt twice. And the first time was bad enough. The second time was even worse because now Einstein defines a sanity as I'm doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? And I fall back into the same trap again because, like with entrepreneurs, our desire to grow and expand what we're doing to impact more lives that we're touching is really strong. Right. And it's really hard for us to get to the point to where we have to understand we have to be careful how we grow because we can grow over the resources we have available to us and really cause our business a lot of issues. And you had to probably go back to zero and start again, right?
And David, no company ever outgrows its leaders and leadership team. And so some of it too, I needed an ego check. Like I was young, I loved what I was doing. I was convicted, you know, God put me on this earth to do this work. And I thought I would be in this seat forever. And that creates a level of comfort that doesn't exist when you feel like your job is always on the line. And in the moment when I nearly lost everything, I started to remember what was really important, right? Yes, I was always in it for the right reason. Yes, I really connected about our community, but somewhere along the way, sometimes you start to think, I'm the one who's doing this all the way because I can. And that moment for me was a really big like wake up call and check. And I realized I didn't care about the CEO spot. I didn't care about running the organization. I cared about the thousands of kids who had gone through our programs at that point. And this organization one day wouldn't exist when they told people that it was there. I cared about the jobs that we had created that people would one day look up and say, oh, what was this company that you worked for that doesn't even exist? And so when I started to think about other people and I stopped thinking about myself, it gave me a whole new set of like focus for what I needed to be doing. Because, you know, the best way I could describe where I was I'm in the middle of the sea in the rowboat. It's pitch black, so there's no way to know which direction you're going in. But I knew if I stopped rowing, I would sink. And so all I could do was row. And I said to myself, if I can't learn to get to that next level, if I'm not the right person for this seat, when that moment comes, I am 100% ready and I will be glad to step aside for the right leader. But that doesn't mean I'm like going to roll over, right? It means I'm going to do everything humanly possible to try and continue to upskill myself to learn and get better, because I don't just want to give it up. But at some point when that time comes, like I'm going to move aside because I care more about what we're doing and why we're doing it than I care about what I'm doing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, no, I could have a whole nother show with you just talking about what you're bringing up right now, because that's a whole nother level of a conversation, and you're hitting on things that are so important for people to understand. And I love how you said the CEO role doesn't matter anymore to you, because it's really what our purpose is and what we're driving towards that becomes your driver. When you almost go bankrupt, your ego's driving, correct? And that's I mean, both of us have been enlightened by this. And again, a little bit of it's just not having those mentors to take us to that next level sometimes in our lives when we really need them. Karim Abouelnaga.
Got it.
Okay, I finally got it correct. Hey, we're a little over on time. I really appreciate you coming on. I can't tell you how valuable this conversation is. I thank you for doing what you're doing to change kids' lives. for the long term. And I love, the last time we were together, you told me that you already had kids through the whole system now. And I love hearing the stories about the kids that really have been impacted by practice and what it does. So thank you for what you're doing in the world. And thank you for being such a great person and a great leader to your team. So
Thank you,
and thank you
David. And
for
I just, I'd
joining
be
me today.
remiss if I didn't say just like how much support we've received from you guys and just how much we appreciate it as we're continuing to go on this journey, because the work we're doing is not easy, and it's not something that any one person can do on their own. And so it really does take a village. And I'm grateful to have you guys as a part of our village. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful to have you too, because like every time we're with you, we get inspired, and it creates an inspiration and both Ted and I that takes us to a whole different level. So thank you. Karim, I appreciate it. And thank you for sharing all your wisdom today. I'll let you sign off, and I'm just going to wrap up the show, and then but I'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
Take care. All right, everybody, this is a Strategy Sherpa show. We missed our break, so I'm just going to keep on going for another few seconds here. I want to remind everybody, Michelle May, she is a doctor, a medical doctor, and she had her own issues with weight, and she came on our show just recently to talk about her business, and we ended up talking about this book. And then I read the book, and then I listened to it. Now I'm going through it, and I'm getting all my notes together for my action plan, because I think this book is one of those books that I'm going to have to read every year just to remind me how to think about food correctly. I've noticed that I've quit eating as much as restaurants put on your plate. And it's just been really great. And I feel a lot better. Michelle talks about it this in the book. Eat what you love what you eat. I want to come back to some of the things Karim's talked about, just to make sure that we wrap this up correctly. Karim was talking about bankruptcy and how companies get too far out in front of themselves. And the real problem that he was talking about is we have this strong desire as entrepreneurs, especially young ones, to go to the next level and go to the next level and go to the next level. And what's the next thing and the next thing and the next thing? I think that if you interviewed my team and you asked them, is David a professional squirrel chaser? They would probably say, oh, they'd probably laugh and say, oh, yes, he is. Thank God sometimes they tell me no. It was funny. We were hiring somebody recently, and one of my team members told me no. They give me consciousness because I've taught them to keep my squirrel chasing in check. Squirrel chasing actually can cause a company to go bankrupt, and Karim talked about that very candidly. And haven't had anybody talk about bankruptcy yet on the phone, on the show the way he just did, other than maybe a couple of different guests. But he talked about it in the sense of the pain that it caused him. Then he realized, I'm in this for the kids. I'm not in it for my ego. So let's get back to the kids. And then the profit, everything else will just fall in line. And I think that's starting to happen for him in his business. And I'm really excited about him expanding it to other places. So when you're thinking about your cash, if you are getting too far into debt, you're using your line of credit as operating in cash flow, you're probably already at the entry gates of hell. And why I say it that way is because if you're using a line of credit to scale your company, something's a matter with your cash. And you really need to look at your cash in a whole different way. And we're going to be doing some workshops. We're going to be doing a lot more. We're adding a whole bunch of workshops about cash. And so take a look at our website, look at the workshops that we're offering. We'll probably have them out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we're going to be doing one a month, because I actually think the economy is going to slow down quite a bit. That's just my opinion. I'm not an economist. I'm not a financial advisor. So you don't necessarily have to listen to me. I just speculate a little bit, just like all business leaders do on this. And I think it's going to slow down. And so what I want to help people with is getting their cash under control before it gets too far out of control. So please take a look at our website and take a look at the webinars that we'll be offering. We cover quite a bit of cash inside of the workshops that we do too. And we're going to be covering cash a little more in depth at our Scaling Up workshop. So if you have some issues with cash, please feel free to join us. We'll be in Portland here on May the 8th. And then we'll be in San Diego, Warren Sager and I. And Warren's a great entrepreneur. Love being around Warren. He is just a godsend, really. He's just amazing. And him and I are going to be doing the workshop in San Diego together. I should say Warren's going to be doing it. He's allowing me to speak a little bit too, because he's really taking over doing these workshops and just really doing a great job. So I'm really excited to be doing these two things. And like I said, we're going to be bringing some more cash in here. So this is the Strategy Sherpa Show. And next week, we have a great guest lined up for you. It's a couple of team members. So join us for that. This is Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez. Thank you for joining us.